I, I was thrilled to be invited to be part of the conversations today. So I think that for me, several themes came out of the day that really resonated with me and the experience that I have. And the first being that resilience is about community health generally, and that the things that make a community one that's resilient in times of disaster are the things that make it a resilient community or a healthy community generally. And I believe that includes looking at people where they actually are, what their circumstances are. I think the point was made that vulnerable people are extremely resilient, and I believe that that's the case. They are extremely resilient, but they're faced with a set of challenges that I think that to make a community as a whole resilient, you have to understand or take into account in the conversation, just as you do the needs of business and the needs of the criminal justice sector and the needs of the health sector and the needs of the education sector. I think all of those parts have to come together and be included in a conversation in order to have true community resilience. It starts with the will of a community. It starts with the commitment and the passion of the members of that community to be resilient. And I don't think you can underestimate that. For all the systems that we're going to put in place, hopefully, and as a country discuss and get better at, if you look at the story of where I come from, of New Orleans, we would have ranked very low on many lists of attributes before Katrina that you would think of as making a community resilient. Our infrastructure was crumbling, our government was dysfunctional, we didn't have a tremendous amount of wealth or assets to bring to the table, we had a high rate of poverty. We had a third of the folks in our community that had no transportation. There were so many issues. We had an education system that had failed. So many things that you would have said, well, this isn't a community that isn't likely to come back from a major incident. And yet it did. And why was that? It did because of the true commitment and the fact that out of the dysfunction that occurred immediately after the incident, we began to learn things organically that we're now talking about in a resilience conversation. So nonprofits and community-based organizations came to the table out of necessity because government realized we were the way that you could reach vulnerable populations. We learned together what happens when your school system is destroyed and your roads aren't passable and your power goes out. And we learned what conversations needed to take place and how to make sure we can have those conversations, which is an incredibly important part of a resilience conversation. We learned what kind of conversations needed to take place. We talked about not having enough grocery stores in underserved neighborhoods as a result of going through this incredible time, because the infrastructure that makes a community thrive is what it also makes it resilient. So I love the keynote speakers. I personally have a lot of respect for Admiral Allen, who was certainly a hero in South Louisiana in 2005. But I also particularly like the vision that he gave of embracing the entire community and then setting strategic goals and objectives and holding people accountable for them. So I think it's a tremendous coming together of people from very different perspectives that are all committed to making all of our communities stronger, healthier, more resilient places.